And I guess, the secret, right? I feel like we need to just put this in a book and make millions and millions of dollars, right? The secret is that once you understand that everybody in the world grows up in a different home and values different things, you realize that it's a complete waste of time. And you're spending so much time trying to give somebody what you think they want, right? And then you work so hard to give them what you think they want. And meanwhile, you are not being true to your authentic self. And, that causes symptoms, that causes anxiety, that causes living in an inauthentic way.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Vasi Sarandopoulou, your trusted psychologist from Anti-Loneliness. Today, I have the huge honor to have with me the licensed psychologist from New York, Renee Exelbert. To tell you a few things about her, which it's only just a very condensed bio of Renee. She's a psychologist and certified elite personal trainer. She received her bachelor degree from Cornell University and her master's degrees and PhD from New York University. Renee is the founding director of the Metamorphosis Center for Psychological and Physical Change, where she integrates psychotherapy and exercise with a focus on the mind-body connection. She is also the author of Chemo Muscles, Lessons Learned from Being a Psycho-Oncologist and Cancer Patient. She is a regular expert media contributor and has appeared in numerous outlets including Thrive Global, Authority Magazine, The New York Post, Parade Magazine, CNBC, Today, and Shape Magazine. She maintains a private practice in Manhasset and New York for the treatment of children, adolescents, adults, and families. She is also an adjunct professor in the Department of Applied Psychology at the New York University Steinhardt School of Culture, Education, and Human Development, where she teaches master's level psychology courses. Renee previously served as staff psychologist at the Cancer Center for Kids at New York University.
Yes,
at New York University.
Where I used to work. Winthrop, New York University Medical Center, Winthrop Hospital.
Yes, at Winthrop Hospital Cancer Center, working with children and adolescents diagnosed with cancer. Thank you so much. I mean, I am, I'm really honored that you are here. I cannot find words. Please let us know a few things about yourself, how it is to be such an amazing person, and how an amazing person's life look like.
Oh my goodness. We can stop this interview right here. You've made my day and I'm good to go. Wow. I think I should shut the computer and leave on this note. I don't even know how to respond to that, but I think that, one of the things that I've been finding, especially as I've been practicing longer, is that this field is such a blessing to be a part of. And as I've been practicing longer and longer, I have made connections that have lasted decades, literally decades. And I've had the honor and beauty of meeting somebody who's 7 years old and working with them when their parents were going through a divorce, and then maybe connecting with them 2 years later in middle school, girl drama, and then reconnecting with them in high school when they're applying for college. And then before you know it, they're in a master's program and they're, a professional. And before you know it, I get a text message with a picture of an engagement ring. And so for me, it's incredibly beautiful to be a part of this profession. And it's exciting to see more attention being paid to mental health right now. We're moving in an exciting direction. And so, so the honor's mine.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I also believe that people are more open to talk about mental health during these, these last years. And it's not only about the pandemic, because I hear that people are talking about mental health because we are struggling with the pandemic. I think it's a shift on our mindset. We are open to explore our souls. We want to become aware of what's happening inside us. Yes. We are not afraid to talk about our struggles anymore. And I think this is wonderful.
It's interesting because there's this shift, there's been so much that has happened with social media where these images of perfection, and picture shopped versions of people's bodies and such are on the internet, and then we're moving towards more towards people embracing their frailties. I think that it's an interesting time because there's a dichotomy that exists. We see in social media people wanting to display only the best parts of themselves, right, and their perfect lives. And there's a whole generation of children and adolescents that buy into this. They see these snapshots of someone's life, not just children, adolescents, adults as well, and it's really dangerous. But at the same time, we're now seeing people coming forth on social media and talking about their vulnerability. So it is a really interesting time.
It is. It is. It is. And what do you say about the image which is projected at social media and commercials is something that sometimes triggers our own perfectionism, that we think that there's a world that perfection exists and we should go there, we should reach it. And perfectionism is something that I'm working on a lot with my clients. So I found your words in one of your past interviews when you shared your opinion about perfectionism and loneliness, and I found that really great. You said, another personal impact of focusing on perfection is that perfectionists often feel very lonely in life. Because they're so busy showing others how competent they are, they often do not garner the social support they so desperately need. Underneath the bulletproof coat of armor that perfectionists wear for others is a shame and fear that they are really not good enough, hiding a more vulnerable person who is in need of support. I definitely agree with that. I mean, that's exactly what happens. Perfectionists are really deeply lonely people. So why are we so focused on perfection nowadays?
Well, I think there's so much that goes on in our society in terms of what it means to be successful, right? And success has typically, at least in Western culture, success has been correlated with material goods, conspicuous consumption, right? And children at a very, very early age are told by their parents that they need to achieve in school, that they need to be on, the soccer team and be a star in a sport, and it's keeping up with the Joneses, and then we have keeping up with the Kardashians, right? Like it's a lot of messages. And I see, in my practice, I see everybody, but I do see a lot of children and adolescents who, at the age of 10 are having severe panic attacks. And, and when they're 14 or 15 are worrying desperately about what college they're going to get into, and if it's going to get them a good job, and are they going to make enough money. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's like, I was thinking about like trading puffy stickers with my friends and eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Like it's really, I mean, it's mind boggling. And I think, so many people correlate their own sense of value through their children, right? And not just their children's success, but what is particularly important to that individual. So if you come from a home where beauty is important, then you're told to never go outside of the house not looking perfect, right?
Yes.
If you come from a home where education is valued, then that's what you value. If you come from a home where creativity or music or art is valued, that's what you believe. But the reality is everyone comes from a different household and everybody learns to value different things. And so there's no perfect, right? We all just have a different sense of what we ourselves find meaningful. And then when we meet other people in the world, if they don't share those same beliefs, if we're looking at things from a perfectionistic lens, they're not as good, right? Like they're not as good as us because they don't value what we value. But the reality is what we value is inherited, right? It's inherited, and it's very much about, an intergenerational pass down of what's important. But no one really says that that's important, right? It's like it's only important because we were told it's important, but there's no grandpapa in the world who's saying that is the most important thing, right? And so, I often marvel at how some of my adolescents who I see will tell me that their teacher doesn't like them because they don't get good grades in class. And,
Oh,
and I'm a professor, right? And so I say back to them, like, it's sort of mind boggling to me. I say, so do you think that, teachers and professors only like, you know, students who earn good grades? And then, I sort of look at my own experience, and sometimes the students who want to appear perfect really annoy me, right? And I personally appreciate a student who's much more well-rounded and who's more honest and who can come in and say, "Oh, I couldn't finish the assignment because I had a bad night," right? There may be
mm,
some other professors who do value someone who earns great grades. There may be some other professors who simply don't care about anything, right? But like, so I think that people have these ideas of
mm.
what the general society holds as valuable. Um, and it's simply not true. Whether it be body type, right?
Yeah,
Like, we know even with cultures, body type is even valued differently, right? Different cultures, you can add 10 to 15 pounds, take off, and you're viewed as perfect, or,
yeah,
and in other, then you literally can cross a country line, right? And then it's like, oh no, I need to gain 10 pounds, right?
yeah.
Very, yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And I keep two things of what all these things, beautiful things that you're saying. One is that we learn that human beings can be compared and measured, as if you are a nine and I'm a seven, and
Absolutely.
I need to get to nine, which is a very distorted reality. I mean, we are human beings that we can never fit in a box or in a scale.
I completely agree with that idea. And one of the things that I say frequently to people is that we're a mixed bag, right? That we all have lots of good, and we have frailties, and that when you compare yourself to somebody else, somebody walks away feeling like the winner, right? There's
Mm,
always has to be a winner and a loser.
yeah.
So if you're in the space where you feel better than somebody else, right, then you feel great, right? But that other person walks away feeling sad and not as valuable. And then alternatively, if that scenario switches, you walk away feeling sad and not as valuable. And the reality is there's room for everybody. And we see this with siblings. We see this with, right? Like, the comparing. And the reality is we all have unique strengths that make us very different. And our differences are beautiful.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And the reason that we get hooked on this mindset is because we believe that if we're not perfect, there's something big which is at stake. And this is something related to our core emotional needs, connection. So you said before that my professor doesn't like me. So we think that we will lose connection or likability or being approved, being accepted by other people. Something big is at stake. That's why we really get hooked on this mindset. I need to be perfect because deep inside me, I believe that this is how I will be enough. This is how I will have friends. This is how I will be approved, protected, comforted, loved.
Absolutely. And it all comes, back to our childhood, right? Like, it's all about, trying to please your parent or parents, right? Or your
Mhm.
that significant caregiver when you're a child. And then learning to read nonverbal variables, learning to read the body language, hearing a sigh, hearing
Yeah.
an accolade, right? And that's like a drug for people, right? And so I often have, young people say to me, my parents don't pressure me, right? Parents don't have to pressure a child in order for the child to want to excel at something. Parents can really reinforce achievement, and that becomes very, like it's a drug. It's like you want
Mhm.
more of that. And
Yeah.
even if they're never critical, and only applaud, you want more of that. And then you grow up, like it never being enough and looking around constantly. And that's when we see the transfer, right, onto our supervisors or our colleagues, always looking for somebody to acknowledge our value. And I guess, the secret, right? I feel like we need to just put this in a book and make millions and millions of dollars, right? The
Yeah.
secret is that once you understand that everybody in the world grows up in a different home and values different things, you realize that it's a complete waste of time. And
Mm.
you're spending so much time trying to give somebody what you think they want, right? Like the superpower to crawl inside their brain, right? First, you crawl inside their brain, you see exactly what they want, right? Which we can't do, but you think you can. And then you work so hard to give them what you think they want.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, you've now taken 10 other people who think you're wonderful just the way you are, and you've, gotten rid of their accolades. But most importantly, you are not being true to your authentic self. And that causes symptoms, that causes anxiety, that causes living in an inauthentic way.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, what you say, that like jumping into other people's mind, trying to guess, try to people please, trying to meet their needs without meeting our needs.
Right.
Yes, yeah.
Exactly.
And it's also true what you say, because people indeed believe that how come I become a perfectionist, or how come I have anxiety, or all these strong inner critic related mental health struggles, if my parents were not pushing me or were not critical. Um, and it's exactly what the parents reinforce sometimes. It's not being critical, but they reinforce.
Because they have their own
And
values, right?
yeah,
They
exactly.
grew up with their own values. And
Yeah,
so it's they're not doing anything wrong, but they are saying, I want you to be like me, or I see the world this way, and so should you, right? And
exactly.
I think one of the greatest lessons that I have learned through my own self discovery and through being a psychologist is I have learned to parent very differently, very differently. You know, when my daughter comes in and she says, "What do you think of these jeans?" Right? Like, I say to her, like, it is not about what I think, right? Which I think is a very evolved thing. Like,
Right. Yeah.
that took me a long time, right? It's like it took a long time, but that's how I see the world now. And she's
Yeah.
like, just tell me what you think, right? And I say to her, you are 17 years old. Like, what you want to wear is going to be very different than what I want to wear, right? Like, we're at very different stages of our life. And if I like something, but you don't like it, why would you give up what you feel to make me happy? Like, right? And if I say I like it, but you don't like it, are you going to walk around in these jeans? Like,
Mm,
so,
mm,
so
mm.
it drives my daughters crazy because they're
Yeah.
always like, I know. Just tell me what you think, though. Right? Forget the psychobabble. Just tell me what you think.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
My
Yeah.
daughter said that the other day with her prom. She was trying on prom dresses, and she said, "Okay, mom, I know you always give me this stuff. Like, I need to figure out how I feel in it." She's like, "But now's the time for honesty."
Yeah.
Very funny.
Of course, the apple will fall under the apple tree. Yeah? Yes. Um, I remember a friend of mine. She was talking to me about her daughter, 6 years old, at the beginning of her school years, and she said to me, "She's so stressed. She doesn't even stop for lunch, and during lunch break, she's doing her homework so that she can be prepared. She's already so stressed." So when I said to her, like, "What do you do after school time together?" "Oh no, I spend time with her individually rather than, all the time with the whole family. I devote time for her." "And what do you do during this time?" "Oh, we do homework." So the only thing that this child learns is that I can be with mom, I can learn from mom, I can connect with mom because of homework. So she has really valued homework and school really highly.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, the intergenerational transmission
Yeah.
of what we learn is important and valued. And yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Talking about trauma, and I want to steer a little bit the conversation to this pandemic. Do you think that this pandemic has been a traumatic experience for many people out there?
Oh, 100%. I mean,
Yeah.
we know, unfortunately, that mental health issues, have climbed, I think, about 30% an increase in depression and anxiety. I see in my own practice, I have never been busier. And although that's, great from a professional standpoint, there are a lot of people really struggling with children and adolescents. They've been struggling with loneliness, with isolation. They're missing witness to so many important developmental milestones. I had my daughter graduate. She had her college graduation, right? I had my other daughter, entering high school. And these are important life events that people need, you know, acknowledgement, right?
Mhm.
Proms or, high
Mhm.
school graduations. Part of our experience as human beings is to have those that we love witness our our good times and our
Of
bad
course.
times, right? And
Yeah.
so there's a real when you speak about loneliness, there's a real loneliness in missing out on that. There's been a lack of human connection. There's been, fear about connecting with other people. And even from the academic standpoint, I have seen a split within the learning where there are some people who have done exceptionally well learning through a virtual platform. They find it less pressure. They're more relaxed.
Mm.
And then others who cannot pay attention, who thrive on the social interaction. So it's been really interesting. But yeah, there are a lot of people who have developed much more severe anxiety, OCD because of germs, difficulty
Mm.
coping. And so there's a lot more substance abuse that's going on. A lot of people have talked about eating issues, right? Like, especially during the beginning of the pandemic when it was like, what do? You're walking around your house all day and it's like, go to the refrigerator. And people were just like opening the refrigerator and just looking, right? Like, what else do you do? Right. So they talked about, instead of the freshman 15 that you see your first year of college, right? The quarantine 15, right? And then we're seeing like the work-life balance. And but there were so many beautiful things that came from the pandemic. People were really starting to see what they valued, that they valued more individual time, that they valued, maybe family dinners every night, or walking their dog. I think dogs were the happiest creatures from the pandemic, right? Got so much attention. But I think that people really saw that their lives could be different. People were working from remote locations. People were starting to think about, maybe I don't want to be in a place where it's cold all the time. Maybe I want to be in a warm climate, right? So I think we saw some significant changes. But I think something that I saw in my own family, when you make money, it's like, okay, I'm making all this, I'm making money. Like, what do I do with money? Right.
Mm.
What do I do with it? Why is it so important if, right, there's a place or a time in our lives where we can't even do anything with it. Right. So it's like, what's the big drive?
Yeah.
Right. What's the big drive for the money? What's the big drive? And, and then it reduces you to these much more essential elements of what really makes you happy in life. And I think, many people were able to grasp that.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. One thing that I appreciated with the pandemic was warm food.
Yeah.
Because when I was working before the pandemic, I would spend the whole day in my office,
Right.
and then I would have something in the Tupperware or, in my lunchbox, and then I would warm it in the microwave, and then I would eat it by myself.
Yeah.
But that's still not the same with having warm, just prepared
That's right.
food and enjoying it without stress and not in front of your computer like this.
Right.
So I appreciated that. I was like, oh, finally, I feel like a human being.
Absolutely. It's such a small thing, right?
Yeah.
But it covers so many important topics about like self-care and nurturance and mindfulness and so many things.
And I think also with the pandemic, this was the time that we spend most with ourselves. I mean, before the pandemic, we were busy with busy life.
Right.
So we had this coping mechanism of putting things under the carpet and being busy or socializing or not having time for the extra layer, let's say the deeper layer of our life and of our existence. But then pandemic happened and then we had to stay at home. We couldn't be that busy. We were not spending so time commuting or we couldn't meet friends. We couldn't go out.
Yeah.
So a lot of time with ourselves. And I think that was also for some people traumatic because all the things that they were keeping under the carpet, they came to the surface and they didn't know what to do with that because
100%. A hundred
the
percent.
previous coping mechanism was not available anymore. I couldn't put it aside anymore. It's there and I have to face it. I have to see all the things that have been triggering me.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's really interesting the different response sets that we have seen from exactly what you're saying. I think there are some people who were really traumatized by many aspects of the pandemic and others weren't. And it makes for a really interesting study because there's so many variables embedded within that, right? Like introvert, extrovert, self-esteem. Like there's so many things in there
Mhm.
to just
Yeah,
analyze. Yeah.
indeed, indeed. Yeah, yeah. Um, Now, I have so many things to talk with you. I don't know. Maybe we need many episodes. So I know also that you have published a book called Chemo Muscles. So you have a close relationship, and you have seen cancer, as Johnny Mitchell says, both sides now,
Oh,
which
I
is
I actually I love Joni Mitchell, but I love your reference to that for
yeah,
sure. Yeah, I
yeah.
have from both
You have
sides.
seen it from your own experience. You have also seen it by working as a psychologist for children and adolescents with cancer diagnosis. And of course, I can imagine that this can be really challenging, very one of the most challenging jobs that somebody can do. So, how was that for you? Can you tell me a bit about your experience working with children and adolescents with cancer diagnosis, and what was the most challenging, what was the most rewarding part of it?
Yeah. I used to refer to my job as God's work, right? Because like it was really holy. And I honestly feel extremely grateful that I had that opportunity and that was a part of my life and a part of my career. Like it was really beautiful work. It did take a toll on me though, because there was the challenging aspects were that you were confronting people's life and death experiences, and you were dealing with a lot of secondhand, vicarious traumatization,
Mm,
and you just couldn't, avoid that. And and the difficult, challenging part was seeing people in so much crisis, and obviously not being able to take it away. And I guess childhood cancer has an 80% cure rate, so for the majority of time, you would get to see miracles,
yeah,
but occasionally you wouldn't. And that was really devastating from a
yeah,
personal standpoint, because when you really do great work, you work with your heart, right? You love. I think that's the only way to work. I'm a boundaried professional, but I work with my heart. I love. And it was difficult to love and to lose, and to experience the pain of the parents, at the same time. That was really challenging. Um, on the flip side, the beautiful aspects, they were countless. I mean, to get to be part of someone's journey in such a profound way, when they're really grappling with so many intense life and death topics, really um, enables you as a professional to share in their growth, right? Their
mm,
post trauma growth, which is like, you can't bottle that, right? It's like, it's a gift. And I feel like I gained so much wisdom and, just so much life knowledge from watching these families go through what they did. And I still keep in touch with several families. And I had beautiful things happen. Like there's some organizations like Make-A-Wish that do
mm.
such beautiful things. One of the girls with whom I worked, her Make-A-Wish was to have a designer design her prom dress. And so she was very sick, but she had this designer design her prom dress, and a colleague um, of mine and myself, we surprised her. And I was pregnant. Uh, I got dressed up in a big gown, and he got dressed up in a tux, and we surprised her outside of her prom with a limo. And because she was going to have to go home right after the prom,
Yeah.
she was sick. She was sick, and we surprised her with a limo, and we took her to this, famous dessert place in the city. And I would say it's probably, one of my all-time favorite memories.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get emotional
I
because she's
know.
not
Yeah.
here anymore. I'm gonna get
Mm,
emotional, but that to me, like, even though there's some sadness in it, to be part of those moments and to be entrusted by these families to share in that journey is such an honor. The honor was mine that they allowed me to be a part of their world when they were struggling so much, and to know that in even a small way I could help,
Yeah,
is really meaningful.
it is. It makes life worth living.
Look what you did to me, Vasya. Oh my goodness.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I mean, I guess that it's one of these memories that cause tears, but at the same
It's
time, they're
beautiful. It's beautiful.
irreplaceable.
Absolutely. And I will also say that, when I left the pediatric cancer center, I was diagnosed with breast cancer only if like 2 months later. And I will say that I took a lot of the strength that I observed in my patients, and
Oh,
I incorporated it. I learned certain things. I even learned some concrete things like when you get your blood taken, hydrate. Take hot water and put warm compresses on your veins because they'll pop, right? So like I learned these things because when people were, phlebotomists were trying to take blood, and I have, not such great veins, I would remember these, this girl that I used to see with thalassemia who would always have transfusions. And so I would be part of her whole like, oh, Renee, could you go get me hot compresses? I have to put, right. And so like,
yeah.
concrete things like that. And then just observing their strength and knowing that if these little kids can get through this, I certainly can.
Absolutely, yeah. And they're so strong and so,
So
I
resilient.
mean, they have a superpower that unfortunately we don't have, or sometime at some point in our adulthood or maybe earlier, we lost it, which is imagination.
Yeah,
They're using their imagination, they're creating the world that's in the way that they want it. And sometimes, yeah, I think at some point we forget how to do that.
that's right. Well, fear contaminates us, and then these ideas of what we should and should not be. I remember years ago I went on this experiential education program. It was called Outward Bound, and we had to do this ropes course, and we were high up, and there was like a long wooden beam that we just had to walk across, right? And you were high, right? And even though you were belayed, you were high up, and so right before it's your turn, you're standing there and the fear's kicking in and it's like, you don't want to go. Right. And I remember my instructor saying to me, act like a squirrel and just go. Right. And it's like, because squirrels don't think about it. They just
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
Right. And it's like, we learn over time to have fear and to think like, what if, and to get in our heads. Right. And children don't.
Yeah, exactly. What are the coping mechanisms that children use, and whether this is different from adults, from your experience?
I think that, children, one of the things that we know about grief is that children and adolescents grieve differently than adults. And so we'll see different things with their response to trauma. We'll see a lot of regressive behaviors,
Mhm.
as opposed to adults who may actually look very sad or may be angry, right? Um, coping mechanisms, like I think that there are coping mechanisms in children and adults that are fluid throughout, things that we know help us. um, one of the things that we used to do we would try and empower children with like medical contracts. I think it's really, really important for patients in general to advocate for themselves, to empower themselves. That means becoming as knowledgeable as possible about your illness, treatment options, providers, standing up for yourself as a patient, asking for things that you find meaningful, right? So, like, we would develop contracts with children, like we would make a little chart, Michael's rules, right? And Michael's rules would say, like, I want to play My Spy with the nurse when I get my chemo, right? We would write it down. And
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
Michael would then feel very empowered because he was part of his treatment plan. Or before you take off the tape of my port, you have to say 1, 2, 3, right? And these are ways that we empower patients. And so that's something that is across the lifespan, right? When I had my surgery, I
Mm.
asked my surgeon if he would play Andrea Bocelli music during my surgery because like I remember reading articles that you can hear it you can hear the music, right? And it calmed me. So I remember saying to him, when I have my surgery, will you play He's like, okay, right? Like it wasn't much of no skin off his back, but it meant a lot to me. And the
Yeah,
fact that he was willing to honor my wishes and partner in my vision for recovery and wellness, right? And then also further empower me during a time when I was so disempowered is very meaningful. So
yeah.
those are some basic coping mechanisms, but there are so many to list, like what we can do as patients. There's, there's food, there's nutrition, there's exercise, there's humor, there's music, there's touch, there's gratitude, there's mindfulness. There are so many. There's social support. I mean, there are so many.
Yes. And have you found also that people were using coping mechanisms that they were counterproductive, they were maladaptive coping mechanisms?
I think that, when you say that, my mind automatically goes to adults, and I
Yes.
think of individuals who I know who have been diagnosed with a chronic illness or cancer, and they will get in their brains, I'm going to die. This is coming back. Right.
Yeah.
And when I hear that, like, I'm like, why would you waste, we have 60,000 thoughts per day, each human being, right? Like, why would you waste your precious, real estate, to be thinking about like bad, right? Like, you have so much power to visualize and to, you can't control what happens to you. You can only control your response to it. So like, so for me, that's, that's very negative. Or people who like, lose that fighting spirit and just give up and surrender, as opposed to people who are like, I'm going to do everything in my power, to get in charge of it. That's actually how I became a personal trainer. That's how I opened my center, right? Like, I found food. The moment I was diagnosed with cancer, I started reading, right? I started reading about breast cancer. I started reading about food and nutrition and exercise. And it was like, what can I do? What can I do to like get ahead of this?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Gain more control, more sense of control, boost the inner locus of control in
Absolutely.
yeah.
And that is about any adversity that we experience in life, not just cancer. That applies to COVID, right? That applies to anything we go through. Our mind is our most important resource, and we're the only ones who can, spend that time. I say to people, like, I even say to my daughter when she's like, oh, she mocks me, but before she takes a test, I say, close your eyes and see yourself like nailing that. She makes fun of me now, right? Because when she's walking out the door, I'm like, you have a test. She's like, I know. Close my eyes and see myself, right? And it's like, but it's true. We
Yeah.
know this. Studies show that we can, like, I mean, one of my favorite studies is this study by this researcher, Carl Simonton, who had patients with cancer envision a Pac-Man, right, eating up their cancer cells, and they showed a dramatic reduction in their tumor size, right? So we know this is real, and so I'm going to do it 24/7 if that's going to possibly help me.
Of course, of course. If this is one little bit that I can change and then change my whole life, of course, why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, as you said, you notice that mainly on adults, we are in denial, or we are surrendering, or we are overcompensating. We're using these mechanisms, and we're getting a lot into our heads, as you said.
Yeah.
Yeah. How your experience being a two-time cancer survivor changed your life, or transformed, or I don't know whether it was different.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I was diagnosed when I was, I think I was fairly young. I was 37. So, when my children were very young. And so I do think that the experience of cancer for many people has many similarities, but I do think that when you're younger, there are different challenges that you face. Um, and I never thought I'd have cancer 2 times, like, I'm a high achiever, but like once was enough. Right. So, I think the way that it changed me, if you will, is when we blend perfectionism with cancer or trauma. I think for me specifically, that was a big thing because I saw within myself a real journey about how I saw myself. When I was first diagnosed with cancer, I felt, very frail, and that it made me vulnerable, that it made me sick, that I was no longer tough and strong, and all of these things, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that was a big challenge for me because I didn't want to see myself that way. I thought that other people would see me that way. I really didn't share my diagnosis with too many people. I was very much, holding on to this sense of identity of like how I should be.
Yeah.
And I think that the difference that I started writing a book, right? And I think the difference that I saw over a 7-year period of writing this book, it's hard to say how much of me changed because I was growing older or because of regular life events and growth or because of cancer. But I think the most dramatic thing for me was that I saw that over the 7-year period, I realized like that I am so much more than my breasts. I'm so much more than the way that I look. I'm so much more than how other people perceive me. I'm so much more than appearing strong, right? That like it just totally changed for me, right? And I didn't hold on to like this piece of my identity like that it defined me. It was a piece of my identity that actually enriched me and made me a much um, more compassionate therapist, a
Mm.
much more grateful person. Um, and so it I think that it helped me with my perfectionism in
Yeah.
some ways. I call myself a recovered perfectionist because I, you know, I'm not at all, in the perfectionism realm, but I think that when I was first diagnosed with cancer, seeing my identity as marred or being disfigured took such a toll on my sense of beauty and femininity. And I think that that was so unacceptable at the time. And now it's
Mm.
like it's not remotely how I see myself. And I think, becoming a personal trainer and I became a bodybuilding figure competitor. I stood on stage in stripper heels and a bikini and flexed my muscles, the whole 9 yards. I think all of that just helped me to see the things inside of me that make me strong and beautiful. Um, and I think in general, I'm just much more of a present person who feels really lucky to be here and lucky to create and teach and be with the people who I love.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I totally resonate what you say as perfectionism when you said that I didn't share it with my friends, because usually perfectionist wants to convey this, yeah, this I have it together.
This image, and so back to your early mention of my quote, right? That's exactly what it's about. It's about like everybody will see that I'm strong and I can handle it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And unfortunately, when we are that way, we miss out on the love and the nurturance, right? Because we're so busy showing people how competent we are, that they're like, oh, she's got it together, she doesn't need help, right? And you know I told my closest friends, but I didn't share a lot with most
mm,
people, right? And that was where I was at then,
mm,
but now, I hope I never have to go through that again, but now everyone who knows me, my
yeah,
patients included, everyone who knows me knows what I went through. And I wrote a book about it. Like I'm really open because it's just a piece of me and it's actually an important piece of me. It's
of
an
course.
important piece of me. It helps me. It helps me in immeasurable ways. Whereas before it was only like a big deficit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think it's one of the most amazing moments for a perfectionist when they become recovering perfectionists, when they eventually let go of this keep it together and I
Of
can do
course.
it by myself, and then they just allow themselves to be embraced by somebody else and let it go,
Absolutely.
just
It's
allow me to be.
wonderful to get love, right? And what's interesting about perfectionism is that the difference between, people are afraid that if they let go, right, and
Mm,
don't achieve and put everything into, they're afraid that they'll like become a derelict, right? And I'm like, you will never be a derelict. The difference
yeah,
between working on a speech for 6 hours and then thinking it's good, the perfectionist will stay another 2 hours and tweak it until it's this random idea of perfect, right?
yeah,
Which doesn't even exist. It's their own barometer of nonsense, right? Someone else might look at it and be like, it was good 5 hours ago, right? But the difference between the first draft of the speech and then 2 hours later, the tweaks to make it perfect is the difference really between nothing.
yeah,
But it's the difference in your life of spending quality time with your family or being peaceful or relaxed. And, you know, you'll still be a high achiever. You just won't feel that terrible feeling of, you know, that you need to prove yourself to other people.
yeah,
That's the
yeah,
big
yeah,
thing.
yeah. That's a big difference. In the first case, you know, you let go, as you say, you finish in 6 hours and you say, I did a good enough job. But then you also give yourself the opportunity to celebrate that you have finished it.
100%.
While in the second one, even though you spend another 2 hours, you never celebrate, you never feel it was enough. You spend your time, your night ruminating, could I have done
Constantly.
something more? Maybe that's the
Right.
better. Maybe what if you give the speech, still not satisfied, still you're finding mistakes about your presentation. So it's never ending
It's
in
never
this.
ending.
Yeah.
And I one of the things that I always say to people is it more important to if you give a speech, right, and you know it's really good and you feel so proud of it, right, and no one comes up to you, no one at the end comes and tells you how amazing you are, right,
Hmm.
or you give a speech that you think is kind of right, it's not so great, you don't feel so good about it, it wasn't, it was okay, but lots of people come up to you. Which is more meaningful? What do you want? Right? Do you want the experience of really feeling good and proud of yourself and it's not acknowledged by other people? Or do you need the acknowledgement, but inside you don't feel it? What's more important? Right.
Yeah.
And I always do these games, right, with the people I see. What's better? I do this. What's better? A full
Yeah.
ride, a full
Yeah.
scholarship to this college, or going to this college, right? This,
Yeah.
right? And they think it's like a trick question. They're like, right? And they give me an answer. And I'm like, there's no better. There's only somebody's opinion of what works for their family or what their family thinks, but somebody else thinks different. So there's no
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I've also observed that imperfection enables connection, which means, to use the
Yeah,
example of presentation. When you see somebody on stage and they're giving a speech, but they're sweating and they're like, oh my God, I made a mistake. Oh, sorry, forgive me. The first thing that you feel like doing is like, hey, you're doing great. Don't worry. We've got you. Yeah, everybody clap. So it enables connection. While if you see somebody, you know, like very in their head, very disconnected from you, giving the perfect speech, there's nothing there to say. There's nothing
that's
there
right.
to connect.
Because people can't relate to them and they end up just feeling competitive with them,
Yeah.
right? Like if you people who are so perfect don't, people don't want to be around them, because the people around them feel competitive and they feel not good enough and they feel judged, right? And that person is so busy showing them how competent they are once again they don't get the support because they're pushing people away,
Yeah.
they're and if they said to somebody how they really feel, which is like, I'm overwhelmed or I'm having a really tough day, they would be amazed that people would actually want to help them. And they wouldn't see them as less valuable. They would see them as more human and they would be much more connected to them.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And this is the same thing that happens when people share about their cancer journey publicly, when they share that this is what I've been through. Is this the same thing? Like we feel more connected to them, more relating to them?
Well, it's such an interesting topic because we're hearing so many celebrities coming forth, acknowledging mental health issues. The whole idea about I wrote an article about this because it's such a heavy topic. The whole idea
Mm.
about sharing your diagnosis, when you are in a state of total disempowerment and trauma yourself, when you share it, when people know, they have their reactions and
Yeah.
they will speak their reactions. And it's very challenging to experience your own stuff when you have to take care of somebody else's stuff, right? Like
Correct.
people will say things to you unsolicited, like, oh, my grandma had that and she died, right? Like they will say that. I know it's like,
Oh,
oh my gosh, how could you? But they will say that.
yeah, yeah,
Or,
yeah.
oh, I know someone who, oh, but they didn't do so well. Or, whatever it is, and even if they try and say something helpful, you are having to navigate their emotions when you're still trying to figure out your own. So there are tremendous benefits that come from sharing your diagnosis, such as social support, such as when celebrities do so, like even with Angelina Jolie, when she
Mm.
shared her double mastectomy and her genetic testing, right? We actually saw something called the Angelina effect. They named it. I think there
Mhm.
was like a 20 to 30% increase in women getting genetic testing for cancer, like after
Mm.
she came forward. So there are phenomenal benefits. And, in terms of putting things out in social media, you inspire people, you make people feel not alone, you're impacting people in a positive way, you're touching them, right? And they're giving you often support, right? They're part of your journey. And you may even garner the attention or support of someone doing an important clinical trial. But
Mm.
conversely, not
Yeah.
everybody wants to share their information. Some people are very private. Some people don't want to be known for having cancer, right? That actor Chadwick Boseman, who was the Black Panther actor, right? And
Mhm.
Kelly Preston, John Travolta's wife, like they never let anybody know they had cancer. And people when these individuals passed away, people were, like, why didn't they share it, right? And many people want to live their lives and they don't want to introduce cancer they just want to do their thing. So there's no right or wrong, and it's important that we acknowledge that there's no
Yeah.
right or wrong,
Yeah.
because it's the their own story, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I write about a lot is that when we share someone else's story with others without that person's permission, we are disempowering them at a time when they already feel disempowered. Because part of feeling a sense of empowerment when you're sick is having, or not just sick, traumatized, is having the ability to tell your story to who you want, when you want, and what details. Whether it's somebody who's been assaulted or someone who has cancer, we cannot assume that it's okay to like share these intimate details, because then we're taking away their power and their control.
Yeah, of course, of course. I know that you also you are an advocate of the strong body-mind connection. And just before we finish, I would like to ask your perspective how this has been helpful in dealing with trauma or chronic illness or cancer.
Yeah. For me, it's a huge one. I live in this very bizarre, weird space in my brain that I am very mind body. When I exercise, I am like literally thinking about, like when I do a push up, right? To me, a push up is the most powerful thing that I do, because when I do a push up, I go down on the floor and I literally in my brain will visualize the negative things that I went through with cancer. And then when I push up, I literally see myself pushing through and
Yeah.
getting stronger and supporting myself in the world. And so for me, I'm a very visual mind body person, and I incorporate exercise with my patients. I have them envision things like they're Supergirl, or they're, I do very, based on each individual, very mind body things to pair the cognitive, the thoughts, with the
Mm-hmm.
physical. We know that exercise reduces depression and anxiety and helps us with memory and longevity and so many things. So and I also believe that when we empower our bodies, and we have a stronger sense of agency on the world. So I'm definitely about that. But in terms of food, something that I also write about and I think is like um, something that I feel really passionately about, is this idea that we know about the mind muscle connection. Studies show that when you think about the muscle you're working when you're exercising, instead of just lifting the weight, if you deliberately think about the muscle, studies show that the muscle shows greater growth. So when I eat food, I literally think about the health benefits that every food provides. And so when I eat broccoli, for instance, I'm thinking about how it contains anti-carcinogenic compounds like selenium and beta carotene. I think about how it removes extra estrogen in my body, which lowers my risk of breast cancer. I do this with everything.
With your mind, yeah.
And not in a obsessive way, but
Yeah.
like as a self-care nurturing way. And I would love to be able to study it in a laboratory, because I firmly believe in it, and I don't think it's not studied, and I really believe in the power of it. Not just knowing that foods can have healing effects, but like literally incorporating, thinking about these healthful foods and how they are impacting our bodies and even our disease, right? So, like when I'm eating, I'm not just eating healthy food. I'm literally spending time thinking, wow, well, this green tea has, polyphenols. And,
Yeah.
and I know that this is, as I'm drinking it right now, it's reducing my risk of breast cancer. And so it becomes a very holy, mindful thing, and then when I eat Sour Patch Kids, I'm like, screw it, right? But I
Yes,
think that it's a very powerful thing. And when you incorporate it with therapy, all aspects of it, it makes for a very empowering model.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, I met you via LinkedIn, and I used to admire you. Now I'm admire you 100 times more,
Oh, thank you,
1,000 times
It's
more.
so it's so mutual. It has been I mean, honestly, such a pleasure to meet you. Like, I feel like I have a friend now, and I'm excited to, come visit you.
I will visit you for sure.
Yeah, you are always welcome. If you ever come to New York, I would love to take you around. I'm serious. Do you ever have you been to New York ever?
Yeah,
Or
yeah. Just before the pandemic, I visited New York for the
I
first
If
time.
you ever come back, I would
Yes.
love to take you around. I'm serious. You even have a place to stay. I would love to take you around. And seriously, like, you are
Oh,
such a warm, like-minded, professional. And it's such an honor for me to spend time with you. It was so meaningful. Thank you so much. I really
thank
feel
you.
like I know you now, and it's such a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel exactly the same. I feel so warm in my heart just talking to you. And I think that if we meet, we will need somebody, like to separate us because we would never stop talking. We will need somebody to say, okay, you go to your room and you go to your room. Anybody who wants to learn more about Renee, you can see her website. It's drexelbert.com, and you can find more information about her. She is an amazing human being. Uh, Before we leave you, any final words from you, Renee? What would you like? Like something like a takeaway message for the people watching or listening to us?
A takeaway message. Wow, just one? That's so hard.
Yeah, I mean, like the whole interview, the takeaway message.
Takeaway message is that we are the authors of our lives, right? Like, it's never too late to make small changes that you incorporate into your daily life that make a big difference in the way that you live, right? And you know, as far as I know, this is it, right? We're going around, and we got to make the best of it. So you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond to it. So
Exactly.
go get it, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm a much richer person than I was before I met you.
Thank you
Now
so
I'm feeling so grateful about that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vasya. That was so beautiful. What a nice, seriously, like, what a lovely person you are. This was such a nice experience. And I'm so grateful that you reached out to me. And I think it's so super cool. Social media has a lot of negative impacts, but like, meeting somebody from another country who
Mhm.
shares so many ideas, it's so exciting to me. So thank you so much. Thank you for
Thank you.
for allowing me
Yeah.
to be a part of this.
Plus, we have the same favorite emoji, the sunflower.
So my sunflowers are very special to me because that's my visual imagery. Like, when I had cancer, I was trying really hard to come up with a visual image that I saw as like protective and healing. And, I really believe in the visual. And so for some reason, I have no idea why, I kept thinking about sunflowers, and
Yeah.
I just see them as like this, unbreakable flower that, number one, always leans towards the sun, always leads towards hope and light, right? And
Yes.
also like weathers storms, right? And so I literally started spending, multiple hours, hours in the day, like literally seeing myself as a sunflower, seeing my petals open up to the sun, leaning towards the sun. My entire office, like, I have sunflowers like everywhere, everywhere. My whole office, there's sunflowers,
Yes.
like, literally. I don't know if you could see. Oh no, you just see my chair. I have sunflowers everywhere in my
Yes.
office. Like,
Yes.
and so that's yours too. That's yours. And why are they special to you?
It's the brightness, it's the warmth of their color. It's, I don't know, it's big, open. I love it. I don't know.
Aw. Well,
Yeah.
we do share that. Well,
Yeah.
now I'll think of you as well when I think about sunflower. So
Yeah.
thank you so much,
Thank you so
Vasya.
much. Thank you.
I'd really love to keep in touch. And I'm serious. Like, if you ever think about coming to New York, I would love to meet you and love to take you around. And I'm really serious. I know I'm a total stranger, but you have a place to stay.
Yes,
so,
I will be there in 10 hours.
Have a beautiful day. Take care.
Thank you. You too. You too. You too.